All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to PagerDuty session, How to Automate with PagerDuty and AWS. We're going to run this like a fireside chat, so we're going to just have a discussion here and then go into Q&A. So definitely save up your questions towards the end, and we're definitely excited to have you here in this beautiful location and theater. So let me introduce my lovely panelists here. So first we have Matt. Matt Smith is a director of DevOps at SailPoint. And then next we have Frances Zhao. She's a senior director of product management at Salesforce. And then next we have Regine Dixon. He's a senior DevOps engineer at Netflix. And then we have Ike Eisenhower. He's the director of SRE production operations at Benefitfocus. So why don't we get started? AWS is a huge conference. There's a lot of different discussions here, obviously about cloud adoption. I think this year there's going to be a lot of discussion of how to become more efficient and optimize your operations and how to become more resilient. And so, it's going to be interesting to hear how some of these companies have approached their journeys. And so I'm going to start with Frances. Salesforce has definitely gone into AWS, and you've really sped up your cloud adoption and journey. And so I wanted to know, what were some of the drivers that really helped you prioritize the journey, but also, there are other providers out there. What really made you select AWS as your key cloud provider?
Thank you, Inga. Hello, everyone. Happy re-event. Hope you guys are having fun the first day event. One thing I realized here is one of the benefits of coming here is this really amazing event is we end up walking a lot, right? Between different conference, between different rooms. And which is good, we take lots of walk. Thank you guys for being here. About cloud migration, I think cloud migration, really is about how we realize the benefit and outcome more rapidly, efficiently by cloud transformation and data center consolidation. At Salesforce, our #1 goal is really about the customer trust and the customer success. So a few drivers here. #1 is we always see the gap between business demand and IT capacity. So the IT department always say, hey, we have limited physical resources, budget, streamline the process, how we deploy, how we rapid grow our business. And with that, we started our cloud journey about 3 years ago. Migrating to cloud really enabled us to move rapidly with all the growth, all our customers moving to digital. And that way really require us to move faster, not only provide highly available services, but also how we rapid our innovation as well. So a few drivers. #1 is really, as mentioned earlier, about IT capacity. How we grow fast, help us to scale, help us to grow. Second one is really about how we support, as Inga mentioned, moving to AWS and also support our multi-cloud journey. And as you guys all know, Salesforce has strategy on the cloud we call Hyperforce. It's really a full stack infrastructure, help us to deploy not only application infrastructure, but also help us to automate the whole process. And which really enable us to move faster to meet our customer commitment. One more thing is also our customers are global. We have a customer everywhere. How we support global compliance, meanwhile support the local data storage. And all of those end of the days make sure we meet the customer expectation and our SLA commitment. So in this journey, we have done a lot. One critical piece we have been doing is about the service ownership. In the industry, we talk about the service ownership is about you build it, you run it, like DevOps. But it's a lot more than that. It's really about service owner. You own your business decision. What do we want to build? How we solve customer problem, and how we have end-to-end service owner lifecycle support our commitment. Start from how we build fully, highly available architecture for our service, how we measure our service health, and how we really take action when incident happens. It's really about end-to-end journey, and automation is the key. We have done a lot in this journey. It's really a high-level strategy, and I think we can chat more about the details. And drivers there help us to grow the business, help us to support our customer. Thank you.
And then maybe Matt, you guys have different drivers, and also curious how you came to AWS.
AWS, well, SailPoint, I've been there for about 1.5 years now, so the decision for AWS predates me. But one of the big things that we've seen is more of the service ownership mindset, and how do you push more of the ownership of maintaining the services that your engineering teams are building out to the engineering teams and less towards a core central team. And I think that's part of the challenge of helping engineering teams to be able to know when their system is having an issue, and what are you doing to help enable them to not only be aware of the issue, but also resolve the issue. So there's a lot of access sort of requirements you need to do to enable engineering teams to facilitate that. And the cloud really helps to be able to facilitate that in a way that's safe, in a way that's auditable, and is secure. A little bit easier than doing it on-prem. You can do it on-prem, but it takes a lot of work, a lot more work than doing it in the cloud.
And Ike, also, same question.
Yeah, our journey's been a lot different than a lot of folks up here, and maybe some of you guys can relate to it, but our organization started off in the .com era. So the platform was pretty much in a fixed state, one where we have to evolve it beyond, and getting it into AWS is pretty challenging for us as a culture. And a big thing that's helped us move to AWS, and a big reason that I'm here today is leveraging tools like PagerDuty, right? It's trying to balance extremes between having a lot of freedom, but also having structure so that you get consistency of results. You're allowing yourself to collect data, and that helps you start building cases and best practices that allow you to make those steps into the cloud. And so, from our standpoint, we've been very methodical with doing it. We've been very cautious because we want to make sure that the data that we have, we're a company that has a platform where you can select benefits, and that's very important information for families and people with medical and other life events. And so making sure that we're collecting that securely and then transferring it is something that, when it comes to decision making and where we allow our controls to be, is something that we don't take lightly. So as a result, we've been very cautious in making our moves, but again, getting us to that space has really been about building the best practices and doing that through the guide rails that have been provided through tools like PagerDuty that transfer to the cloud when you're there. So.
And before we get to Netflix has a little bit of an interesting relationship. They're fully on AWS, and so we know Netflix is a huge global streaming service. So they are able to push, I think, AWS kind of to their boundaries. So I'm interested to hear how that works with you.
Yes. So as you may know, there's a little company out there that streams movies called Netflix. We have about 200 million subscribers delivering content globally. So we've been all in on the cloud since our inception, or since AWS inception, I would say. We've kind of made a strategic bet on AWS, and we've kind of gained a huge partnership with the organization to really drive the technology and the whole industry of the cloud. So, of course, we're just delivering content, small chunks of media assets across the internet to entertain people. But in my particular department, we're in the studio space. So we're not so much focused on delivering those small assets to the end users, but rather producing those assets. So taking them from the camera footage and then putting them to the platform. So In the studio space, we have a lot of other challenges when it comes to migrating workflows to the cloud. As you know, it's a very aged or ancient industry. Hollywood has a lot of predefined methods that they've kind of found to be very safe, and we're trying to push the limits of what the industry can kind of accomplish with the media and entertainment space. So the cloud is now being leveraged for production or content production purposes. We're storing assets in S3. We're actually automating a lot of the studio pipeline workflows, whether it be actual asset ingestion or asset transfer from third-party vendors. A lot of that is enabled through AWS and the cloud. One of our strategic bets at the moment would be on just content in general, where we've been kind of in that space for a few years now. You may know shows like Orange is the New Black, so we are now kind of creating our own content, as many of you know. So that is actually being delivered through AWS and our strategic partnerships. Observability and PagerDuty runs hand in hand with the studio. These assets are actual content that people want to enjoy. We bring joy to people's lives. We want to make sure the content creator or the content creators are joyful to deliver these great stories to the globe. So we will continue to push AWS in the limits of media, or in the media entertainment space, as well as just the streaming space as well.
Great. So a couple of them already started talking about service ownership. As you move to the cloud, the idea is you really have those two pizza teams that AWS loves to coin them with. But it's really about giving people the freedom to make decisions and to move faster and be closer to their customers. And I think that companies always strive to do that, but it's not always a smooth path to get there. There's always obstacles and pushback and just really a new way of working. So I'm going to start with Ike this time because I know you're at the very beginning stages of that. And so I think it'd be interesting to share sort of what happens when you're not quite there, where teams haven't embraced that, and what impact that has on the organization, but also I think on the customers.
Yeah, it's a drag, to be real honest with you. It's a diffusion of responsibility in a lot of cases, and so we're on the path to transitioning to ownership, full stack ownership of things, and you have to shift the mindset of people on so many different levels. You have to do it from a technology standpoint, but you also have to have people buy in and take accountability for the stuff they put out there. And it goes all the way from the product level, where they're developing things and thinking about it, and then the developers putting the ideas into reality, but then supporting it on the back end, right? A lot of kind of what we faced was out of sight, out of mind, and releasing things into production that maybe needed a little bit more thought. And so, it requires strong leadership. It requires breaking down silos. And so that's one of the things that we've really been focused on as we are making this ownership journey, is identifying those strong leaders, those leaders who understand that in technology you have to constantly be evolving or you're going to get left behind, and then having them embrace the new systems, but also give them a roadmap to that end result, not just show them point A and point B and say good luck, right? We have to actually walk them through it and be able to provide data that tells us on our journey that it's paying off, that you having this ownership, even though you're working maybe a little bit harder here, you might put in some extra late hours, it pays off in the end, and we all benefit, and more importantly, our customers benefit, right? Because they get a more robust product, you have a greater understanding top to bottom of how things function, and when you're making decisions, they're informed, data-driven decisions as a result. And so, we have a long way to go. And we know that, but it is one of those things where you have to take the first step, right? And again, as I mentioned when I first started talking, the way you take the first step, or at least the way that we take the first step, is when you have the buy-in of leadership, but then you also start to put guide rails in place, right? So that you can collect the information that provide the data to say that you are on the right path. And then if you're not on the right path, you adjust fire accordingly, right? But it's constantly pruning it and making sure that you're checking in with each other, and you're optimizing. And so, we are seeing a lot of positivity, and the data is bearing fruit. But we also have a lot of tough days and a lot of hard conversations. So I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to that.
I think, and Matt, you guys are in a very different stage of this journey.
Yeah, so I'd say about 95% of our infrastructure is in AWS, at least in our SaaS product that we provide. The other 5% is in Azure. But I think part of the joy of that experience is definitely being able to empower our engineers. There's still some work that we're even needing to do on that front too. I think there's not a silver bullet that just says you can give everything to your engineering teams up front, because you still need to make sure that you're keeping everything secure and that you're meeting your compliance regulations. And so I think the cloud does provide a lot of good facilities for that. But as well as enabling your software engineering teams, when you're moving from that operational mindset of having numerous engineering teams involved, you start running into challenges of things like major incidents where you have numerous teams that are being involved in an incident. How do you get all those teams to communicate and engage with one another? It really turns into more of a cultural problem than a technological problem, because you're needing to coordinate teams that don't necessarily work with each other day to day, that need to start communicating quickly, like on a dime. They need to be able to quickly turn. And what kind of processes are you putting in place within your organization and training to get everybody up to speed on how to do that in a prompt way, so you can remediate your issues that you have in a timely manner?
And then Francis, Salesforce is a huge organization with different teams and teams spread all over the world. So how have you approached sort of migrating to that model where, development teams can really move fast and own their work and be able to make decisions for the customers?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, before I share, I really like one thing, Matt, you said, empower the service teams. So even before I came here, I'm still defining our journey. Service ownership is a journey. It's not overnight. Hey, we're all good, right? We are in this journey. We started about 2 years ago. We're still there. I want to share a few critical things, but also challenges with you guys. Probably lots of you in a similar journey. Number one, very important, is about culture. If you look at it 20 years ago, even not long, 15 years ago, hey, I'm the fantastic engineer, I'm writing the code. You have QA, you have system engineer, you do different testing, you do release, you do production. You have so many departments. You know why? Because used to one release take 18 months, right? Now, moving to cloud require us continuous deployment. I see a lady here smiling because everybody in that journey. And in the industry, we started with DevOps. Okay, you build it, you run it. Okay, all yours. You go fix everything, right? So it's really not about just that you as engineer own everything. No, it's about the whole team. Just want to share you. I was defining our service ownership persona doc. This is very important, folks. Is the service owner a role? I said, no, service owner is a set of responsibility. Everybody related to the service is a service owner. Engineers, product management, you have folks working on the security, you have folks working on a different part, all service owners, because you're owning this business together. Service ownership is not only about you build it, you run it, but also make a business decision. Why you building it? How you gonna go to market? How you measure it? How you gonna put your stuff in the customer hands, right? So all of those is about the service ownership. You have to make sure what, why, and how. Make sure we build a service with a high, good architecture, follow on security, compliance, and most important here, I think also Matt mentioned is about observability. So 3 things. Number 1 is about the culture. It's not about the blaming culture. We started a very close partnership with PagerDuty. We get entire company on PagerDuty. It's not about the finger pointing, not about the blaming. It's about the together. We do this together. We own this together. Culture is super critical. Second is observability. Lots of teams probably, hey, I'm still running on as a monolith application. I've been doing this for a long, long time. But how we make sure we observe everything, we have monitoring, we have not only infrastructure layer, but also application layer. Especially when you move to cloud, everything moves quickly, dynamic. How we observe with distributed tracing, how you know your application call-ins, relationship with your dependencies, all of those important. So observability lifecycle is critical. How you collect telemetries, metrics, event, trace, how you make sure set actions, alert enabled, PagerDuty set up, and you do also have your incident management process. End to end is really important. And also you have to measure your outcome. TTX, time to detect, time to resolve, time to engage. It's really about the collaboration with the team. Third piece, very important, is about how we make sure so all of these integrated together, integrated, measured, and it's really about customer commitment. So I want to share a couple of challenges in this journey. One is about dependency. Lots of you probably from engineer department, and how we measure, upstream, downstream dependency. Hey, just like a couple of weeks ago, folks call me, hey, Francis, we have this incident. We don't know where's the problem. We have so many different incidents, so many dependencies. Where is the problem? So how we find where is the problem? Again, observability. You have all the data collected. Especially the challenging part is how you monitor your networking call-ins relationship, right? Which is critical. And I think that's very important. So we will talk about how we build those data correlation. At Salesforce, we do have a service ownership platform, allow us not only have data correlation, but also integrated together. So which is really critical. I think dependency always a big one for us to focus. Second is about responsibility, accountability. So when we have, hey, dude, you have to prove it's my problem, otherwise don't page me. So that's a problem you guys hear all the time. How we make sure we have owning the together culture, make sure we all have collaboration. I think those are the very fun challenges that we have, but we're really getting there, and it's really a great journey we are running at Salesforce. Yeah.
And then how does Netflix handle, for example, incident learnings? Because Francis mentioned that, we don't want to have that blame culture, and we want to learn, and, Netflix, not to pick on you, but when things go down, a lot of people feel it, and they can be very, very loud these days. So how do you ensure that you are able to deliver great services and take those risks, and at the same time, know mistakes can happen, and you're going to learn from them versus point fingers?
Exactly. So to both Matt's and Francis' point, it's ingrained in the Netflix culture. We have a few concepts, freedom and responsibility, as well as people over process. These are kind of ingrained in the Netflix culture to make every employee, every stakeholder aware of every solution that's kind of being delivered throughout the organization. So Netflix kind of opens up Pandora's box. So every engineer has access to prod. This comes along with that freedom and responsibility concept of we are all adults here. We have a job to do. We understand that role, so we will accomplish it to the best of our abilities. So with our culture, we're able to really steer our entire org to success. We're not limited by silos. We're not limited by it's you build it, you own it. We also have the concept of you build it, you own it, but it's ingrained in our culture. So a lot of these systems and dependencies that our solutions kind of latch onto are supported by other teams within the organization. So we're building a framework around the systems and solutions that we build rather than kind of siloing these solutions to one department or one team. As far as observability, that's also core to our values. We know if Netflix goes down, a lot of people are kind of disturbed and distraught. It's not the end of the world, but yes, it's the end of a few minutes of your happy, joyful time. So we're definitely working to maintain observability. We have applications such as Chaos Monkey, which kind of just wreaks havoc on prod, and it's able to self-heal our network to actually bring our services back up without any real intervention of an engineer. Automation is key to that. Also key to that automation is the cloud. AWS allows us with their APIs and their various frameworks to bring these all together, to bring pipelines and actually processes that become best practices. So as we say people over process. Pick the right people. Of course, that's easier said than done, but it should be ingrained in your organization. Your hiring team should know with their hiring managers what exactly the role entails. You should make sure that those candidates actually meet the standards of your culture. Actually kind of give a bit of rigor to your interview, to your candidates to kind of ensure that they fit properly and that they will kind of own, as she was saying, the ownership of these solutions, that they will be responsible for these solutions and that they will take pride in them and hopefully, and maintain those solutions. So Netflix, it's core to our culture, freedom and responsibility. We all kind of know it. We're adults. It's kind of just get the job done.
So this group is definitely getting right into all the topics. And obviously, we're also here to talk about automation, which is huge because everyone wants to guard their time no matter what. You only have so much time. So whether it's, automating tasks or jobs, automating across different teams to ensure that you're really focused on business critical and you're able to automate as much as possible. And so I'm interested to hear how you're handling automation in your organizations, if you're using PagerDuty or other tools to really ensure that your development time is protected and that your teams are really able to focus and not be pulled away from things as things happen. And we'll start with Matt since I think he's.
Sure. So, there's definitely numerous different tools you can use to accomplish automation. It's really about making sure you understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve and you're using the appropriate solution, whether that's, self-healing type of activities that is better to bake directly into the product or into the infrastructure that you've got established, or if you're trying to figure out how to enable your engineering teams to remediate an issue in more ad hoc human decisions that are being made to remediate something. We're not necessarily using PagerDuty Automate for what we've got going on, but we do have a lot enabled within our CI/CD infrastructure to enable, not only the delivery of the work that we've got going on, but also for some of the remediation of activities that happen, and even looking into some other things that are more investigative in nature to enable, our engineers to be able to go and do that with. I think one of the things that you said there with regards to every engineer having access to production, I know for me and for many others, they'll hear that and they'll be like, well, we can't do that at my job, right? There's different compliance and requirements that might be in place. And there was a conference I was at many years ago where I heard Jez Humble throw out the concept of flexible segregation of responsibilities. And to this day, I try to Google that term anywhere and I can't find it. But one of the things I've come to learn over time is when you look at segregation of responsibilities, it's not necessarily about the ad hoc or the RBAC-based access controls and this person has a role and this person has a role that needs to get something done. It's really what are you doing to establish your processes such that any process or procedure that's happening has that second set of eyes to be able to ensure that you have make sure everybody's being an adult at the end of the day. And so you really have to take a step back and look at your processes that you've got going on and making sure that there's checks and balances in everything that you're doing. Even in an emergency situation, what are you doing to make sure that this action that's being taken, it's okay for this person to go ahead and do it? And so it still comes back down to that culture concept, right? Because you need to be able to look at what you've got configured, how you're configuring it, both from a technological point of view in securing things, but also from a process procedural point of view, so that you're not trying to find that one person that you need to get involved because they have the permission and you don't, right? So how can you introduce that concept of flexibility despite potentially being in more regulated industries that require that?
Great. And Francis, how do you approach automation at Salesforce? And like where do you focus your automation efforts, and how do you ensure that you're automating, but you're also making sure that it's secure, that the right people have access, that there's process in place, so you're not looking around?
Yeah, definitely. You know, again, I'm going to share a couple of things how we do this, also some challenges. I feel like probably more useful for all of you, right? I want to talk about two things in the automation. You know, we all talk about, if you talk, you know, we get many requirements from our service team. At Salesforce, as you know, lots of service came from acquisition. Everybody probably already came with the operating process. You know, how they do monitoring, observability, how we do incident management. But in the whole automation, I think besides we talk about the CI/CD pipeline, how you really enable faster deployment, but also two things important I want to talk. Number one is about the data. Similar to Salesforce CDP, we have correlated customer data to enable you to build different solutions on top of that. From IT side, operation process side, we also have centralized single data store to allow you pull all the data together, allow you to automate, and allow you to integrate. Think about it, probably majority of you representing a business, you have data came from all the different places. Your monitoring data, some came from APM system, metrics, log, you know, event, trace, all of those, right? So you also have your definition, like user permission team from somewhere. You also have your service definition come from somewhere. You have your incident data come from somewhere. PRB data from somewhere. You know, PagerDuty from PagerDuty, right? At least for us, that's the case. We have data came from all different places. How you automate, you know, how you really accelerate. Number one is you have to create a correlation. What's a relationship? Oh, I have one incident. Actually, my incident data, PagerDuty data, my alert data actually related to same incident. How do you know? Critical is how you connect those data together. At Salesforce, similar to CDP, again, we have a single source of truth metadata store. Allow you to create that relationship, allow you to correlate. One side of single source truth data store is define your service and the permission. Which team, like a team data. You have a Scrum team who is responsible for this service, right? Also, you have your service definition. We have a product called Universal Service Directory. Basically, any service deployed to cloud, you have to that registry defined, which is used to define your incident management process to configure PagerDuty as well. So unified metadata allow you to do integration, allow you to automate. Super important. I know probably all of us have challenges. Oh man, we have all the different type of single source of truth, which is not a single, right? How you make sure you absolutely have a single source of truth. Second is how you maintain data accuracy. You have this definition, okay, single source of truth definition of a service. How you make sure you don't put the junk data in there. 3 years later, still clean data store, which is also super critical. You have to have certain mechanism, make sure data is accuracy. Second thing is, on top of that, use that to enable you to integration, enable automation. How you integrate that metadata into your alert system, your monitoring system, incident management system, and also integrate with the PagerDuty. So when the folks get waking up at 3 a.m., you know which service team, what incident related to that wake up call, right? So which is really important. Two things, you have a correlated data store, allow you to describe all the data together. Second is integration and automation. Those are very, very important. Of course, all of us have to deal with all the different systems, and that's why we call this is a journey. It's not overnight, hey, we go, then we all get there, but it's a journey. But you have to have strategic vision defined, we push to that direction, and we will get there.
Sure, thank you. And Regine, I know that you're using PagerDuty automation in your creative teams. I'm curious, like, how did you come to finding it? Like, what was the problem they were facing, and how did you get them to do things differently? And like, what benefits are they seeing now that they're fully adopted the automation?
Exactly. So we actually stepped into PagerDuty automation for something as simple as a cron server. We had productions that needed to basically audit assets on a cron, and they didn't want a method that was just a cron server. They wanted identity behind it. They wanted access management, IAM. They wanted a secure application rather than just a cron server. So through my years of using PagerDuty automation, formerly Rundeck, I've kind of brought those two solutions together to kind of automate these asset workflows or asset management workflows. So there's applications in the media and entertainment world to kind of manage assets called ShotGrid. This application just manages scenes, assets that are being produced across a production. Usually these triggers are done by artists within the application that are kind of basic clicks in the interface. So we needed an automated version of that. We used an event trigger, which is native to the ShotGrid application. From there, we were able to integrate PagerDuty's webhook, or PagerDuty's automation webhook service or feature, which was able to enable multiple assets to be audited or triggered via just an ingest of an asset. So that you no longer had that user that had to click that button, but rather an asset ingested into our system, which then triggers that event to basically go off and do a workflow against our asset management system or our data store, which is heavily Windows-based. So that was also another huge task to overcome, being that a lot of artist machines are still Windows-based. A lot of asset pipelines are still on AD. Things are very locked down in the Microsoft world, but we were able to overcome this with a combination of PagerDuty, Amazon Web Services, and of course the native asset ingest application. And with a bit of tweaking of the APIs and different libraries used to actually get the functionality, but through the actual product, PagerDuty automation, we were able to achieve these great solutions, which have basically streamlined a lot of our productions to increase the volume that our artists are able to work at. So they're able to deliver assets more quickly, they're able to audit these assets, and for producers to verify, or directors. So it's been a huge plus for us just down this journey. Deployment-wise, Netflix is a great company. We've kind of definitely ingrained the deployment process in our culture. There's an open source application out there called Spinnaker. It's a great application for managing all of your cloud resources. We kind of use that as our backbone for all of our deployment and automation purposes, whether it be EC2 instances or any particular service or resource you would want to deploy in the cloud. It's kind of a framework that allows us to automate anything. I would heavily recommend you check the project out. It's an open source project, but definitely a great tool and helps us in our daily efforts to move fast and not break as much.
Great, thank you. And Ike, what about, are you using any automation right now or future plans to start doing that at Benefitfocus?
Yeah, so as you can see in the title there, we have a big focus on SRE, and major components of SRE are making data-driven decisions and continuous improvement. And it's good to have observability, it's good to collect data, but you have to do it with purpose, right? And you have to have both a short and a long-term perspective on how you're going to solve a problem. And so, the thing that we really do is we get an alert, we get an escalation, we work the escalation, we leverage tools that provide us feedback that says this keeps happening over and over again, right? And we do the analysis to say, okay, my team from an operations standpoint, let's use run deck automation to go ahead and put a fix in place so that we don't have to constantly click a button to make this problem go away. Let's have the system solve it, but let's not forget it, right? So we use the postmortems when we're doing a PagerDuty incident to identify the short and the long term. And what that means, I think it goes back to sort of the ownership component that we were talking about earlier, to go back to the developers, to go back to the product owners and say, right now we have this system stable, but this is going to become a bigger problem if we don't sort of address it in the long term and get it on the backlog. So how do we get this on the backlog, right? And so, from an automation standpoint, you have to be thoughtful and you have to attack things from different angles. And my team, again, is focused on getting things operational and getting things working, and then allowing the developers and the long-term planners to go and put fixes in that are going to make our product more efficient overall and optimized in the long term. And so it's very important for us to be able to collect the data, but also work with them and say, it's great that you're collecting data, and it's great that you think that this is an important thing, but let's use our operational mindset, and let's put ourselves in the mindset of the customer and say, are these things really important to them? And let's focus on observing those key performance indicators that are important to our customers, that are important to meeting our SLAs, and not just data points for the sake of collecting data points, and then rolling that into a continuous improvement plan that allows us to have longer term stability. That's my team's focus from an automation standpoint.
Thank you. I think a lot of things that I've heard you mention, all is responsibility and teams taking responsibility and thinking of how to build automation, build in the cloud. And so of course, we can't leave the conversation without sort of touching upon security a little bit. Of course, Matt and SailPoint's, and identity management. So I think we chat a little bit of, not just picking secure tools, but really building secure applications in the cloud and taking that responsibility on yourselves, and of course extending it to whatever tools you use as well. So I'm curious to take SailPoint perspective on that, because that is something top of mind for all your customers.
It's definitely something that's top of mind for all of our customers, and your identities for many companies that that you use for protecting your assets and how you function and how your systems work is critical for your security. So that means we need to take security just as equally as seriously. And it is something that we push down on all of our engineering teams. From a security point of view, there's not really any stone unturned you need to look at there. We do work hand in hand with our security teams to make sure that our systems are, we've got our vulnerability management program is top notch, that we're working on making sure that our software engineering teams are well trained on good coding practices for security, but also just it kind of comes down to the responsiveness of when we know there's an issue, and how do we act and respond to those things to make sure that they're being addressed. And it also comes down to kind of what I was mentioning a little bit earlier about, you can't necessarily grant everybody access to everything, because when it comes to security, you really want to try and keep the access level as restricted as possible. When that gets really difficult, when you're trying to do like a DevOps style mindset where there's more openness and transparency. So you really got to take a step back and look at, well, how can I keep these things secure but still provide that transparency? And so oftentimes access to systems starts to be perceived a little bit differently, more from how can we provide maybe not direct access to something, but maybe access through some other ancillary means that has that gives that transparency to those that need the transparency but no more. That's really one of the things that's core for us, to make sure that we're keeping our systems secure as we're developing them.
Great. And switching gears a little bit, so we've talked a lot about like when things break, making sure you don't have that blame culture and make sure you're doing those learnings. But I think one of the things that we can also start talking about is bringing kind of customer service into the fold, because they're the ones really on the front lines with customers. And so a lot of the times they're the interaction that you have with the customer while someone else is fixing the problem. And so sometimes they don't know what's going on, or they're just hearing about a problem for the first time. And that creates a very bad experience at the end of the day for customers, even if something is fixed very quickly. So for instance, I'm curious how, I know that Salesforce has a big stake in the game with that, and your product, like how do you bring customer service into the fold and make them really part of the solution and give them the information and tools they need to be able to have that great customer interaction while teams are also fixing the problem?
Yeah, definitely. Bringing customer service team to service ownership entire life cycle is super critical. It's not only just about being transparent when we communicate to customer, but also, by our definition, customers are part of our service ownership journey. So very important thing is, number one, I want to share thing is, number one, define your customer user journey. So how you measure your service, really focus on customer use case. For each of our service, probably CRM, Service Cloud, Industry Cloud, all of our service, we have a set of a customer user journey defined, representing customer experience, representing customer behavior. This related very important topic in this journey is SLO management, service level objective. I know it's a wonderful industry trend, but really look into that. How you measure based on the service experience, not by your internal operation metrics. For example, you go Amazon.com, Amazon.com page not loading slow. I'm the example. You go web page. You want to measure page loading slow. You want to measure your shopping cart not respond within millisecond. You want to measure customer behavior instead of your internal CPU usage. This is super critical. SLO management, representing customer behavior, customer use case. That's why we work very closely with the customer. Sometimes you can define those, but sometimes you require client-side integration to define that. How you do that end-to-end SLO management definition is super critical. This is the first very important thing. Second is make sure all the customer-related behavior incident captured, measured by your SLO definition. For example, if you have a service incident, by doing customer calling you, escalation, we have customer service team, CCE department, which is not good. You should know before customer calling you, how you make sure all of those are measured in your SLO framework, which is super important. Number three, I want to share is very important. You want to make sure all incident, PagerDuty paging, alerting, notification are actionable. You do not want to wake up your engineer at 3 a.m., not related. Yes, if a customer shopping cart not responding, payment system not responding, page not loading, yes, you can page folks, wake them up 3 a.m. But you do not want to wake up folks, hey, look at your capacity planning because your CPU data is, showing some red color, right? So you really want to focus on things actionable, captured by your SLO definition. Really three things, very critical. Understand the customer user journey. Make sure all the things captured by your SLO management. If in your PRB process, something incident happened, not really measured by your framework, you need to make sure add that. You have, regression testing, all of those, make sure it's captured. Number three, actionable. Every single company, believe all of you guys have to manage noisy alert, right? Everybody has that problem. How we manage noisy alert. start from a clean definition of SLO, service level objective, which is really critical. So those three things I want to share is I think it's really important for us to keep our commitment to customer SLA, but how we do it have to start from beginning, right?
Thank you. And I think one of the themes that we're hearing a lot here is obviously customers, right? A lot of what you do, you're doing it for your customers to have that better experience. And I know a big theme for this conference is resiliency.
Yeah.
And how do you build for that? And so that's going to be the final question to the group, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. But what are kind of, as you look to the future, how are you going to build for your resiliency and ensure that, you know, your services stay up and running and can recover quickly? And so maybe we'll get at Regine first.
Yes, so introducing chaos. Introducing chaos. That's the best way to overcome chaos, is to actually go through it. For the most part, you want to actually test, of course, in prod. No, I'm just playing. You want to test, of course, you want to go through the proper release processes. But at the same time, you want to benchmark your applications and your solutions. You want to actually hammer them as hard as you can. You don't want to send a few requests. We notice a lot of prod applications get put into production with limited benchmark testing. And once data actually hits prod, it starts to hammer the system. So it's kind of ingrained in your culture. You want to take pride in your work. So you want to actually give it the actual, you know, the due diligence that it deserves. So you want to kind of train your solutions to be strong. You don't want them to falter at the slightest of incursions or the slightest of even compromise. To Matt's point and what his company does, should anything become compromised, it should have a limited effect on your entire product. It shouldn't take down prod, so to say. So as we say, we give every engineer access to prod. It's a part of our culture. Of course, it's definitely not going to fit in everyone's organization, but if you can kind of build a framework for your organization to where you can kind of engender these type of these concepts to maybe present new hires with new ideas of how to work outside the box and think of solutions more differently rather than for just your job. You're delivering a solution for a customer, whether it be internal or external. Take pride in what you do and just give the rigor to your solution that it deserves.
So I want to thank this great group for a great discussion. Matt, Francis, Regine, and Ike, thanks for joining us today, and thanks for a great session at reInvent.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.